Hello, my loves, and welcome back to This is Mariya podcast. Today, we're going to tackle the topic of dimensions. We're probably not going to be able to get through all of the dimensions, so we're going to get started on what the dimensions are and how they are different from one another. So stay tuned. This is the topic that has been interesting to you. This is a very dense topic, very rich topic, a little bit complicated. So I figured today I would break it down and hopefully simplify it for you. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you are not meditating with me on our sacred universe, I wholeheartedly invite you to do so. There are new meditations, new guided journeys that are uploaded every week on Sundays. It is a beautiful healing space, and the more the merrier, so I hope that you can join. Secondarily, I invite you to check out my book, 72 Keys to Manifestation, or An Ancient Path of a Modern-Day Alchemist. That book is channeled, and it contains 72 chapters, 72 keys to help deepen your spiritual practice and to help you with manifesting anything you want. It is both a practical book and a book that contains the knowledge. So every key, every chapter is going to have a practical exercise or meditation for you to work through. So for those of you that like guided meditations, perhaps check out the book in an audio format available through Audible. That's that, my darlings. We are ready to dive into the topic of dimensions. I find that on this planet, there's quite a fair share of confusion around dimensions. The topic of dimensions is fairly dense because it requires for us to understand how this matrix, this universe, was created in the first place. And so today I figured we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the why behind dimensions and why is our reality the way that it is. And we cannot do that unless we are going to go straight to the mastermind of the great architect to try to understand what was the premise behind creating the dimensions, what is the difference between the different dimensions, and why do they exist in the first place? Like the big why. We have all of these whys for us to untackle today. So as you guys well know, the Matrix is a system that enables souls to have a slew and a variety of different experiences. The reason that you would want to have these experiences at soul level is because you use the Matrix as a means of, or an aid, an assistance tool for evolution or ascension at soul level. All of the experiences that you can have within the Matrix are predetermined by the menu, shall we say. So it's in the same way that you are going into a restaurant and they're handing you a menu of things that you could possibly eat. The Matrix has a menu also. So basically, prior to incarnating, you are selecting a lot of the things about yourself, right? Like, are you going to be born male, female, non-binary, where are you going to be born, what planet, et cetera, et cetera. So there are multiple facets and aspects for you to select from. One of those things is you have to select a dimension in which you would like to incarnate. In the same way that when you're ordering at a restaurant, you're going for one dish over another. That is how your soul is going to look at the a la carte menu of all of the dimensions that are available to it for incarnating, and it's going to pick and choose. So initially, dimensions were created as a very intellectual system, a very precise system that would dictate a particular experience based on the dimension. Let me take a step back and explain this. And again, this is dense material, so bear with me. Dimensions, despite being different from one another, the one thing that is common about dimensions is they define the common characteristics of experiences that you could be having within a particular dimension. So think of it as, okay, if you go to Paris, for instance, there is a range of experiences that is available to you in Paris, such as, visiting an art gallery. It could be eating French food. It could be, taking a little boat along the Seine river, the River Seine, or, all the things that you can do in Paris. Now, if you go to, a famous mountain chain, the types of experiences you could have there are very, very different. For instance, you could go rock climbing potentially, or if it's the winter, you could go skiing or snowboarding. But it's not that you would go to the mountain, to the mountainous area. I don't know, like you wouldn't go to the Everest if you wanted to experience an art gallery. Same thing with dimensions. So dimensions are predetermined experiences, right? Almost like, okay, like one dimension is like Paris. The second dimension is like China, somewhere in China, like Beijing, let's call it. The third dimension may be, okay, like the Himalayas. Now, this is a very rudimentary way of explaining it, but I'm going to start bringing it home for you. So essentially, when the architect was planning the matrix, he said, and it's a he said, okay, how am I going to divide this vast array, this vast terrain of experiences that one can have in a way that any soul, no matter how sophisticated, can understand? And so the architect came up with a mapping concept. And he created dimensions in the same way that, the map of planet Earth is divided between, oceans versus land, and then the land is divided into countries. There is kind of like the method to the geography. Same thing within the matrix. So the matrix has been divided into multiple dimensions. Each dimension has been predetermined. So there are certain characteristics or features, shall we say, that each dimension has. Based on those features, the amounts, not even the amounts, but the kinds of experiences that you could have as a soul are very, very different. All of these features are very explicitly stated. So any soul, you at soul level, are no exception, knows what are the different experiences that you could have within each of the dimensions. Now, are all of the dimensions available to you at any given point in time? Not necessarily. When you are just starting on your journey as a soul, certain dimensions may be closed out to you, and then essentially the more, shall we say, karma points you earn, you unlock certain levels. As simplistic and as funny as it sounds, as above, so below in certain instances. And so we can draw a lot of analogies from computer games that are present on planet Earth, because there are a lot of similarities to how the Matrix is built. So once upon a time, shall we say, in a land outside of time and space, the architect sat down planning this vast terrain of experiences called the Matrix. And in order to simplify it for everybody, he chose to divide it into dimensions. Every dimension was given a reason for being. Every dimension was given the why. Every dimension was given a set of experiences that would usually go with it, and a set of, or shall we say, a range of vibrations that are native to that dimension. Based on that, and rather, shall we say, because of that, no two dimensions are created equal. At the same time, let's take a third dimension. While any third dimensional world that we could examine would roughly have a similar range of vibration, there's still a lot of differentiation between the worlds. So the range between different third dimensional worlds, the same as different fifth dimensional worlds, is quite wide. So the gap of experiences, or rather the range of experiences that you can have, is quite wide. So it's in some ways, understanding dimensions is really, really critical. In other ways, you can have such a range of experiences that you could visit 5 third dimensional worlds right now, and they would look so different to you. Which is why sometimes even at soul level, dimensions can be complicated. Now, there are common denominators, and what I was going to offer today is a little bit of a different look at dimensions. Very often when you hear dimensions being studied or even explained on planet Earth, most people go into the physicality of it, or the physics of it, right? The height, the length, the time as a dimension, it's almost like they're looking at how the sausage is made, so to say, instead of the why behind it and the what it is. And I figured I would not go into the length and the height and all of those little, shall we call them, the axes that make up the dimensions. And I would approach it from a very different perspective. My intention is to show you and to explain to you how the different dimensions are different from the perspective of experiences that you could be having as a soul. Because That is the shortcut to understanding why all of them have been created in the first place. By the way, how many dimensions are there? There are, shall we say, 12 main ones that a lot of souls go into. And then after the 12th dimension, you can actually unlock another 12. And they go in like cycles of 12. There is an unlimited, essentially, or infinitely large, I should say, not an unlimited, an infinitely large number of dimensions. However, they only get unlocked past dimension 12. And technically speaking, you could collapse all of those higher dimensions above the 12 into the 12th dimensional space. So for all intents and purposes, that 12th dimensional space just becomes very, shall we say, robust and very abundant. And we would not be incorrect if we were to say that there are 12 main ones. We would not be incorrect if we were to say that there is an infinite number of dimensions as well. New dimensions are being created all the time. There are a lot of experiments that the architect and his helpers are running at any given point in time. There are a lot of dimensions that are test dimensions where souls don't even come to incarnate. Those dimensions are just being tested. They're being tested or tried to see what kind of experiences they are and aren't able to deliver. So there's always like a whole slew of dimensions that are being in test mode right now. There are a whole slew of dimensions that, by the way, have been retired. So in this current version, if you've been with me long enough, you know that this is the 4th version of the Matrix that we're currently incarnated in by the current architect. There were matrices prior to that. When I say the 4th version of the Matrix, that is like a full overhaul, right? When you almost like take out one system and you're creating another. Almost think of it, although it's not a perfect explanation, but you know how you guys have, let's say, an iPhone, right? And you change your hardware once every few years. But then there are software upgrades in between, right? Like where you have to download, I don't know, like iOS 14, 15, 16, etc., like a new operating system. The new hardware piece would equate the new Matrix. So when I say there have been 4 versions of the Matrix, it's like there have been 4 distinct iPhones, so to say, within the cycle of this architect's tenure. And then in between, there are software updates to each version of the Matrix. So our current version of the Matrix has had thousands upon thousands of software updates and upgrades. Sometimes it does shift how dimensions interact with one another. Sometimes it shifts how dimensions are meant to perform, and even the whys of each dimension can be slightly adjusted. There are some general rules, though. And today, I'm going to take you. Actually, we're going to start with the lower dimensions, and we're going to go up, and we're going to move up, and you're going to see exactly how different they are. And again, my perspective is not to explain this from the standpoint of physics or the standpoint of all the hard science, shall we say, that went into creating it, because that does not answer the most important question. The most important question is, how do they feel? Why? And what kind of experiences do these dimensions offer? Collectively, these 12 dimensions, or shall we say the 12 main dimensions, are representing a full set of menu at a restaurant that is currently available within the current matrix structure. Again, and then there are some things that are, for the special guests, for the souls that, let's say, reach a certain pinnacle of their development, that the 12 dimensions, the way they stand, are not necessarily able to help their soul evolve further. For those souls, very often they would go in an offshoot direction and go into like a whole other dimension. By the way, a lot of these, and I don't know, I'm tempted to say it, but I don't want to confuse you. Let me actually hold this thought. We're going to go into maybe dimension 1. Why don't we start with the first dimension, what it is? And I think as we go along, it'll all start becoming a lot clearer to you. So the first dimension is the dimension of the absolute. That is the name of it, the dimension of the absolute. It is also sometimes called the dimension of oneness, or the dimension of 1, which makes sense, right? It's the digit 1. So what does it feel like? What is it? This dimension was created to enable souls to experience oneness over separation. That's why it's called the dimension of the absolute. This is as close as you can get to experiencing yourself as source consciousness, right? So you get into this dimension as a fractured soul, as a little fractal of source consciousness. And you can experience yourself as the entirety of existence, and it is effortless to you. So essentially, you get you get the perception of source and through the first dimension. You could and you would feel like you are integral in yourself. You're whole and complete. You are all that is. This kind of experience is a very prominent game, shall we say, that souls play via the first dimensional game, right? And another way to think about dimensions is like a game, right? Like, what are the different games that are available to you? Games 1 through 12, and how are they different, right? So this first game that you can play is the game of the absolute, or the dimension of the absolute. In this game, you either are seeking to experience yourself as source consciousness, or there are other things that are available to you. The core question that you're here to answer or experience at soul level here is, how does it feel to be oneness? How does it feel to be one? Or, how does it feel to not experience division? Like, all of those core questions are answered by the first dimension. Another thing that is available here is you can essentially code or program your first dimensional experience in a way that you experience, no pun intended, a particular facet of reality. Meaning, for instance, let's say that the only thing that you want to experience as you experience oneness is the frequency of love. And so you would go into an experience where everything is love, and you are love, and you're one in and of yourself. So essentially, you would experience yourself as the source within yourself that is, all of its surroundings and itself is love, right? So like, you would go, and essentially it's a single dimensional experience. And love would be everywhere, right? Love would be surrounding you. Love would be in your cells. Love would be in your soul. Like, that is the only thing that is available to you. And then essentially you stew in those juices for some time. And then you go back, you disincarnate, you die, quote unquote. And then that experience is over. You could go and experience another facet of energy there. I don't know, like, you could pick suffering. Like, how would it feel if everything in the world, in the universe, in creation was suffering? How would it feel if everything in the universe and creation was joy, and you were the absolute, and you were like the only thing available, and the only consciousness around, and you were joy? Like, how would it feel to be joy? How would it feel to be pain? How would it feel to be suffering? Like, all of those things are available to you. And very often, prior to undertaking a particular vibration in higher dimensional worlds, such as 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, we can keep going, you would first experience them as a oneness of that energy. Now, these experiences, they don't really, at soul level, they're like pretty instant. Like, you usually program how long you go into one, because sometimes getting out of them could be a challenge. And so usually souls pre-program how, the length of the stay within the matrix, right? And then they just automatically would be evacuated out of that experience. So they don't really, in that experience, you don't really perceive death. It's, the way that you guys would in a third dimensional reality. It's more of the on and off switch, like the on switch, now I'm oneness, and the off switch, and then you're not. So it's a very different way to experience reality. But again, that does teach you that concept of, well, how would it feel if everything was oneness? And the reason that is such a valuable experience is because a lot of time at soul level you still spend in a fractured state, right? So source consciousness has divided itself in order to get to know itself and in order to just experience more. And so as an individual soul, you yearn to go back into oneness. And so the first dimension really allows you to do so. It allows you to go back into that oneness temporarily and experience a whole set of emotions that are associated with oneness. As somebody who's experiencing oneness, you have an unlimited potential for creation. So some souls actually go to first dimensional worlds to create things. But most of it is really more often than not, like creating things is more of an outlier of an experience. Most of the experiences that are very common are people that just want to, not people, souls that just want to experience being. So the first dimension is the dimension of being. So you go there to be a certain way. And like I said before, be love or be hate or be suffering or be joy or be serenity, whatever it is that you want to experience. Or sometimes you just want to be the absolute. And that is the container for all of it and the kitchen sink, right? Imagine how that feels, right? So for a single individual soul that, is still on its merry-go-round of incarnating, going to the first dimensional world could be the closest experience that you could have to actually feeling how Source feels and thinking how Source thinks and just perceiving how Source perceives. So it's a fascinating experience. So that's the first dimension. The second dimension is the dimension of observation. And again, we're not going to go into a set of coordinates and if it's a point or it's a line, what, it doesn't really matter, right? The second dimension is the dimension of observation. This dimension is really, really interesting. So this is a dimension of learning. There are a lot of great learnings that are happening in 2D. Now, of course, from the perspective of the soul incarnated in a second dimensional world, it doesn't feel flat. In fact, it feels like a very spatial experience. Now, from our perspective, or from your perspective rather, it would feel very differently in a second dimensional world compared to a third dimensional world. But not to get ahead of myself, a second dimensional world is the dimension of observation. So it's a little bit of me versus another or me versus them, right? So it's an individual consciousness that comes into an incarnation to observe something else, usually outside of itself. And the question that you would usually be curious and asking yourself at soul level that would even prompt you to want to incarnate in the second dimensional world is this: how does it feel to be X? And you can fill in the blank. Like X is anything. For instance, somebody may be asking, like a soul may be asking itself the question, how does it feel being the sun? And so, and then, let's say that is where the curiosity got sparked for a soul. A soul would then choose to incarnate in the second dimensional world, a world of observation, in one of the two roles. Either they would incarnate as the sun and observe the world from the perspective of the sun, right? Or they would incarnate as another consciousness or another being that is observing the sun. And through that process of observation, the answer to the question of how does the sun feel, or what does the sun perceive, or what is the sun? And the answer to that question becomes clear through observation. So two-dimensional worlds are all about silent, very serene, lo-fi observation. When I say lo-fi, it's not the world of interaction. It's a world of watching, seeing, and perceiving. So you don't incarnate in a second dimensional reality to be in massive action. In fact, massive action is not really all that possible. All the actions are really programmed for the second dimensional world, and you're just really observing. It's kind of like watching a play as a spectator, if that makes sense, right? You are not a player on a stage. You are observing the stage, if that makes sense. And so these worlds are actually really interesting. The concept of time does not really truly exist in the same way that it doesn't exist for first dimensional worlds, just because it's irrelevant. Those experiences are over when they're over, and they usually are over when the main question is answered. So the soul comes in asking the question, like, for instance, let's say I'm the soul and I'm choosing to experience myself as, I would like to understand what is the sun. And I would like to understand what is the sun from the perspective of a mountain. Let us just say that that is the experience that I have selected for myself. And so I come into a world that has been pre-programmed in a second dimensional reality. And I would incarnate as a mountain. And I would observe the sun day in and day out, how the sun rises, how the sun sets, the sun in zenith, the sun during summer solstice, during, winter solstice, during the equinoxes, all of the above. I would observe from the perspective of a mountain until my curiosity is sated and until I, for myself, have answered the question of what is the sun, or how does the sun feel, or whatever my core question was going into this incarnation. The moment the question is answered, you quote unquote die. Because the reason for being for this incarnation is complete. Like, you have reached your end destination. Now, whether it takes me 3 seconds to do it or 3 billion years, it does not matter to me, and it doesn't matter to my soul, so to say. As long as I get my question answered, I'm golden. And that is what's so fascinating about second dimensional worlds. So again, very often, by the way, souls choose both, right? You can come into a second dimensional world and be both the sun and the mountain that observes the sun. Sometimes you can do it simultaneously. Sometimes you can do it, one after another as an experience, right? Like a back to back. And that may produce a different answer, by the way, to the question of what is the sun, right? Like the sun from the perspective of the sun may be one thing. The sun from the perspective of a mountain is another answer. The sun from the perspective of an ant is a third answer. The sun from the perspective of a tree is a fourth answer, and so forth and so on. So the number of experiences of observation you can have are limitless. Like, honestly, that's an infinity. You can observe so many things from so many different angles on so many different planets. It will blow your mind. Like, the number of settings that are available for observation are just infinity. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say you want to observe motherhood. You may choose to observe a particular mother or multiple mothers, and maybe the question that you want to answer is, what is the full extent of the feelings of a mother? Like, how deep is mother's love? Let's say that at soul level, you're really, really curious about this question. You may opt into going into a second dimensional reality as an observer, watching a bunch of different mothers and their children to understand how deep would a mother's love go. As an example, in this case, you may choose to be air, or like a particle in the air, like ozone or something, or oxygen. Or hydrogen. It doesn't really matter. Like, you can be a molecule or all of the molecules of a particular chemical molecule, and you could be just floating in space, and all of these mothers would be around you, and you would be watching the extent of mother's love. You would be watching women giving birth. You would be watching, women going through the death of their child. You would be watching, mothers sacrificing themselves. You would be watching mothers just in very mundane, just making food or like cleaning, entertaining the kid, like reading out loud to them. All of those experiences would eventually help you answer the question of how deep does the mother's love run, right? And as soon as your soul feels like it got its core question answered, again, you disincarnate, you're gone, right? So those are second dimensional worlds. And again, it's me versus them. So it's the observation when, by definition, you are not the only participant. In the first dimension, you are the only thing that is. So even if you wanted to observe something, you're going to have to observe yourself, which is really, really hard to do. And that's not really, if it's like first dimensional worlds are not about observation, they're about experiencing, right? Like being something. The second dimensional worlds are usually not about, they are about like, it's like almost like watching the trends, watching the patterns. It's all about, it's like the seek for understanding through observation, if that makes sense. Like, it's an empirical way to learn by observing. Those are the second dimensional worlds. Third dimensional worlds, and that is when we're starting to bring things really closely to home. You guys didn't know what third dimensional worlds are. I'm going to tell you. Why would a soul possibly want to incarnate into a third dimensional world? A third dimensional world is usually the world of tension. These are essentially the third dimension is the dimension of tension. Now, there are many other names for it. You can say it's a dimension of conflict usually. It can be called the dimension of the rough edges. Yeah, but I like the dimension of tension probably the most because I think it's fairly self-explanatory. So remember 3, right? Like 3 is the triangle. 2 is about observation, right? It's 2 objects, right? So it's one observing the other or one interacting with another a certain way. But 3 is that first number of conflict. It's also the first number of creation. So third dimensional worlds are the worlds where you would go to be in action. Third dimensional worlds are not really about observation all that much. Third dimensional worlds are all about the actions that you are going to take. They're all about a conflict. Usually every third dimensional world has at least one, if not multiple conflicts that form its core, form its DNA, form its nucleus, if you will. And those core tensions really determine the script of the game or the play or the movie. And they really determine the energies and the vibrations of each third dimensional world. They determine the happening, the soup of happening. They determine, what are the lessons that the souls can come to learn in a third dimensional world. But usually there is that inherent antagonism. Third dimensional worlds are not harmonious worlds. Third dimensional worlds are not the worlds where you have things figured out. And it's you like almost graduate from a second dimensional world into a third dimensional world when you are done with observing. And in fact, you want to try your hand in acting. And that is where, you start accumulating karma. It's actually it's impossible to accumulate karma in the first 2 dimensions, funnily enough, because in you're in a first dimension, it's just you, yourself, and I. So, what are, the impact of your actions on others are non-existent because you are everything. So you can knock yourself out. In second dimensional worlds, karma doesn't exist either because you're just observing. Like, again, it's not like you are even allowed to go and intervene. No, you're just here like a little fly on the wall observing, right? Like as the heir, you're not going to be engaging with the mother so much and the child, right? You're just here to observe. Third dimensional worlds, you are here to act. You are here to see and witness the results of your actions. And that's why actually third dimensional worlds, despite the fact that they're challenging and they're tough and they're dense and they're hard, you learn very quickly in third dimensional worlds because you act and then you very quickly get a feedback mechanism around the consequences of your actions. And that's why it's actually a lot, shall we say, like your failures are pretty obvious to you. And because of that, very often third dimensional worlds are conducive to faster learning if a soul is willing and ready to go through these experiences. Willing. So third dimensional worlds are the worlds of, like I said, tension. There are so many different variations of how this can transpire. But very often there are multiple camps, at least 2 camps, 2 warring camps. And they're antagonistic and they cannot stand each other, or there's just some inherent way of why they cannot come together and become one. It could be good versus bad, which is actually by like light versus darkness is actually one of the core premises of planet Earth. This black versus light, the good versus the bad, that is one of the core tensions for planet Earth. And that is why a lot of human beings have such a deep set need to be good, is because this is one of the core tensions, right? So if you showed up to this world, if your soul chose to incarnate here, that means that there's something about the tension of good versus evil that speaks to you at soul level, that you still believe at soul level there's something for you to learn from or experience, right? For whatever reason. It could even mean that at the level of your higher self, there was a little bit of a fracture, or maybe there was a little bit of a temptation to experience the other side, right? So it is what it is. And that's why these third dimensional worlds, they're actually really, really good at kind of like allowing you to face your demons, allowing you to face your shadow, mirroring things to you that are out of alignment, because they are really here to, bubble a lot of tension up to the surface. They're not harmonious worlds, but what they're good at is elevating all of the things that are out of harmony and kind of like raising them to the surface and helping like bring them front and center into your consciousness, your individual consciousness, as well as the societal consciousness. But there are, so many tensions, like for instance, even on planet Earth, like good versus bad is not the only tension. There are a lot of competitive tensions on planet Earth. There are a lot of tensions around self-concept of, being like this kind of like egotistical, like my way or the highway, where, a particular species may feel like they are somehow superior to another species. Like that level of antagonism is very much a core tension for planet Earth, for instance, if you were wondering. And of course, what is like, how do these worlds usually transpire? There's a lot of conflict during in these worlds. Like the concept of war, for instance, or revolutions, or different classes of beings that are somehow antagonistic to one another. Like the concept of slavery, for instance, is smack in the middle of a third dimensional world consciousness, because it is one of the core tensions. It is one of the, it's one type of being limiting the freedom of another type of being in whatever way, shape, or form, right? And slavery, by the way, has taken many shapes and forms on the face of planet Earth. It's not just human slavery. It is how a lot of animal species and a lot of plant species are really slaves to humanity at this point, right? So like slavery is not skin deep. It's a pretty big tension on this planet now. Unfortunately, third dimensional worlds don't usually get a resolution. You would usually come into a third dimensional world to experience the full extent of the problem. You don't really come here for an easy way out. You don't come into third dimensional space to experience bliss and harmony and serenity. That's usually not the case. Now, is it a possibility as an experience, right? Like we know Buddha, he did experience a lot of serenity, and that is, how one of the tenets of his teachings is like, how do you escape the samsara of a third dimensional planet is, by kind of like becoming a little bit of an observer, right? So Buddha did actually borrow from another dimension, like almost actually more of a second dimensional psyche, actually, and concept, to get the people out of the rat race of a third dimensional world. Can it be helpful? It's certainly another perspective. Yes, absolutely. But usually speaking, souls don't incarnate in a third dimensional world to experience bliss and harmony. They incarnate in third dimensional worlds for quick learnings and to experience the good, the bad, the ugly, and the everything in between, right? Like third dimensional worlds are usually very intense worlds. They are emotionally charged. They're mentally charged. The soup of happening is very thick. A lot of things are happening all at the same time. A lot of these things are vying for your attention, again, because it is the dimension of action. It is the dimension of getting outside of your comfort zone. But of course, like, why are we here? Why did we show up? All third dimensional worlds, and like that's the plot, and the end game is to hopefully try to resolve the conflicts. The funny part is, like, you resolve one conflict, there is a whole other conflict that just pops up in its place, and that's just it's like just the energies of a third dimensional world. And not to scare you guys, but like it feels like the rough seas. Like the seas of a third dimensional world are not meant to be calm, and they're so by design. And before you're tempted to say that I'm negative or you would like to throw a rotten tomato at me, I want you to see that, I'm not saying this to make you feel bad about a third dimensional reality that is planet Earth. I'm making you aware that, A, you have selected to be here. And by the way, there is a method to your madness at soul level, right? Your soul wanted to experience the rough seas, right? It's because, they say that the rough seas make really, really good sailors. If you want to become a really, really good sailor, you don't go to the calm seas. You try to navigate the conflict. You try to navigate the rough seas. You are going into the tempest. You're going into the soup of happening. And you're like, okay, I'm going to really find out what I'm worth through this experience. And that is essentially a third dimensional world. Now, let me say one thing. I think there is a common misconception with people. And especially in the spiritual community, there's a lot of talk around, of course, obviously planet Earth ascending into the fifth dimensional consciousness. And the same thing, I think, is there's that misconception of like souls and how they incarnate. And that at first you kind of like, it's like a step ladder, right? And that's a misconception. So the misconception is that you start at probably the first dimension, if not a zero, and then you gradually move one up, one up, one up, and eventually you go to 12D, whether you're a planet, you're an individual soul. And then, ta-da, you've ascended and you're complete and wholesome and perfect. Now I would tell you, not so quick and not so fast and not so easy, and paths are not always quite so linear. Here's the deal. As a planetary consciousness, planets can choose different merry-go-rounds for their journey. There are planets that choose to start in 12D, then go to 7, then go to 6, then go to 1, then go to 7 again, and it's a little bit haphazard. Other planetary consciousness that choose a very deliberate 1 through 12 movement? Absolutely. Is planet Earth one such planet? No, planet Earth is skipping dimension 4, going straight into dimension 5. Has planet Earth already been in the dimension 5? It has. It chose to go back to work through some of the conflict. So it wanted to go. Gaia wanted to go through a stage of conflict resolution. So it went back to a third dimensional space. Fundamentally, whether you choose a planetary body, or you choose a human body, or you choose a body of an animal, or you choose a body of a galaxy, it doesn't really matter to incarnate. It doesn't really matter from the perspective of all of these bodies are available to you. One is not necessarily better than the other from the perspective of your soul learnings. It's just there is an appropriate body for the lesson that you need to learn at this point in time. So yes, sometimes the body of an insect is more preferable than the body of a galaxy. I'm just saying. Depending on the lesson that your soul needs to learn, right? So I think what you need to get out of your head is that somehow something that's 12 dimensional is always better than, let's say, 1 dimension. The answer is one is not better than the other. It's like, I don't know. It's like having an argument. What's a better dessert? Is it cheesecake or is it tiramisu? I don't know. Random examples. And the answer is neither one of them is better than the other. It's a matter of preference. And by the way, if you're vegan, the answer is neither of the above, right? So it's all a matter of preference. And so same thing from dimensions. One is not more preferable than the other. Depending on what your soul needs to experience, in what capacity and in what order, that is how you would choose which dimensions you want to go into. Now, do dimensions get progressively, quote unquote, more complicated? I would say to some degree, yes, but rather your perception becomes more expanded. It's like every time you move up a dimension, you add a little facet of understanding. It's almost like there's another veil of, that falls off. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize I also have this facet to be able to perceive. Oh, it's like, I don't know, only it's like when in one dimension you only have your eyes and you can only see, and then in the second dimension you can also hear, and then in another dimension you can also have the sense of touch, and then in the next dimension you can also experience taste, right? I'm not saying that is how this was just a mere example to illustrate what it means. Every dimension is more expansive, but it doesn't mean that dimension 7 is always better than dimension 3. Because if your soul needs to learn the good versus bad, the third dimension, the dimension of tension, may be the shortcut, right? And that's why, evolution is not a linear process. And that's why sometimes you may be jumping, your soul may be jumping in between different dimensions. And very often your higher self would be incarnated in many dimensions all at the same time, right? It would have a little part of it incarnated in the first dimension, learning one thing, in the third dimension, learning another thing, in the seventh dimension, learning something else. And all your higher self is experiencing all of these things in parallel. And by the way, it doesn't perceive one experience to be more preferable or superior to another. Again, it is just depending on the lessons that need to be learned and the challenges that are present. I wanted to, this has been long, so I wanted to take a couple of questions from the collective, and we will leave the other dimensions till the next episode. Anything that was unclear, perhaps, I'm here to respond. Anything on the dimensions that we have discussed? The question is, you said that conflicts don't usually get resolved all the way in third dimensional worlds. So does it mean that on planet Earth, the good versus bad is never going to be resolved? Actually, no. So the good versus bad conflict on planet Earth is going to be resolved once the planet moves in fifth dimensional space. And this is not an episode on 5D. But fifth dimensional worlds are not the worlds of tension. In fact, they are the worlds of harmony. And so, yes, actually, a lot of third dimensional conflicts get harmonized automatically once a planet moves into a five dimensional consciousness, right? So for planet Earth, this big conflict of good versus bad, good versus evil, black versus white, if you will, is definitely going to be resolved the moment the planet fully transforms and transitions to 5D. Because a five-dimensional consciousness, it's a different game. That game is not conducive to conflict. That game is not conducive to irreparable differences, right? The me versus them, the zero-sum game, like that is just not the fifth dimension. So a lot of these things are going to be worked through. There's obviously the transition period, when you move from one dimension to another. In the same, it's like jet lag, right? When you guys travel, I don't know, from New York to Indonesia, there is going to be a jet lag because of the 12-hour time difference. Same here. There's a little bit of a transition period when you go from a tension-based world into a harmony-based world. But it's, shall we say, a normal process. It's a work as usual. And, it is a choice that planet Gaia has made, right? So Gaia has said, okay, we're skipping the fourth dimension. We're going to go from 3 to 5. It is essentially what the planet is telling us is it's had enough of tension. It has had enough of this conflict mentality, and it is ready to finally be released and relieved from these energies and move into greener pastures. But at the same time, yes, when you are in the rough seas, and the whole point of third dimensional worlds is that it would always be the rough sea, you don't come into the soup of happening that is meant to resolve itself unless the planet is moving out of that dimension. It's almost like, I don't know, you can think of dimensions as a particular kind of water. It's like a water of a particular color, and it has a particular quality to it. Like a third dimensional world is like the rough sea that is also cold. It's like, I don't know, where the Titanic drowned. That kind of somewhere up in the north with the icebergs. It's not meant to be pretty, you guys. I mean, you may not always hit the iceberg, thankfully, but the sea is still cold. And no matter what you do, that ocean, that part of the ocean is always cold. It's meant to be that way. It's designed to be that way. It's a particular experience. It's almost like the settings, right? The interior design of the third dimension is that it is meant to be based on tension, and it's meant to bubble all of these conflicts and all of your shadow up to the surface so you can deal with it, you can transform it. No, it's not meant to be purple rainbows and pretty unicorns. The fifth dimension are the pink waters, or maybe the turquoise waters, if that feels better, somewhere around, I don't know, in the Caribbean, right? With the teal waters and white sands, and your little ship or your little boat is kind of floating, and it's always the land of eternal summer, and imagine there are no hurricanes. That's the 5D. If there is a hurricane, it's going to be resolved. Don't worry about it, right? And those are very different oceans. Yes, sometimes these two oceans merge, right? That is when, the little Titanic over here from the North Seas chose to, and in this case, the Titanic is, I guess, Gaia, but, and pardon me for this analogy, because we're not about to drown by any stretch of imagination, but they are being connected into, the North Seas, so to say, are being connected into the Caribbean over here, and it's going to be a very, very different feel once the planet moves to 5D. So hopefully that helps illustrate the point. Was there another question around dimensions? The question is, why 12 dimensions? It feels like, why 12? I mean, 12 is one of the numbers of completion. It's cosmically, right, considered by the great architect that in order to bring full oneness, something needs to be divided 12 times. And once, then you bring the 12 together, then you're really able to shall we say, it's the minimum number of particles that, when brought together, allow you to experience full oneness, right? Like if you want to cover the full ground, the great architect believes that it needs 12 parts, right? There are a lot of, 12 comes up all the time. Like there are 12 months in a year. Now, of course, if you go solar, if you don't go lunar, there were the 12 disciples, there are a lot of 12s everywhere. So it's one of the major numbers of completion, cosmically and numerologically. And that's why the 12 were created. Now, I will tell you that they're not created equal, they don't experience the same level of action, if you will. In the same way that on planet Earth, there are popular destinations for travel, and then there are destinations that some people and nobody ever goes to, right? I would tell you that the most popular destinations, 3D is a very popular, actually, believe it or not. It is a very popular dimension. There is a lot of activity in 3D. I would say 30% of all souls actually select third dimensional worlds, even when they have a choice. 3D are very popular. 7Ds are popular. 9Ds are popular. 11D is quite popular, actually. So there are popular dimensions out there. 5D, not so much, actually, weirdly. It's not a very popular dimension. 6D is not very popular. It's actually quite tough. Not in the same way that the 3D is. 1 and 2 you usually would do very early in the stages of your soul. And then you don't usually go back to them, so they're not that popular as well. 12th dimension is actually really complicated, and it's more of the closing of the loop. And so that's, you don't really see too many souls incarnated there. It's kind of like, think about it like there are 12 movies to watch, and, not every movie is a blockbuster. There are some movies that are better than others. And so the number of worlds, like let's say like a third dimensional world, right? Third dimension is very popular, right? Now, because it's very popular, the architect and his helpers are going to spend an exorbitant amount of time creating new worlds and new games and new scripts and new storylines for third dimensional worlds. So some of the most diverse worlds in terms of choices, in terms of the range of like ecosystems, climates, geographies, all of that are in the third dimensional worlds because they're just so populous, because souls really want to go there, and because of the level of evolution. They're tough, but they're worth it. And so, you guys, if we wanted to end on a positive note, you are all, most of you, in the third dimensional world, you're also lucky because it is just such a popular movie to watch, a third dimensional world. So you all showed up for a blockbuster. Isn't that great news? So, yeah. So if that, if you need something to give you comfort, please know that you showed up to watch the hot movie. Especially right now, this transition the planet Earth is going through. I mean, it's a pretty spectacular transition. Transitions from 3D to 5D are some of the most fun transitions actually to experience at soul level, because the shift of energies is so dramatic that it's like, wow, like that contrast is like nothing else. It's such a roller coaster. It's beautiful. And that's why so many of you showed up. Alrighty, my darlings. Well, this is it for today on Dimensions. If you're watching this on YouTube, please let me know in the comments how you're feeling about this. Is this resonating? Do you feel like this is too complicated? Do you have any questions? Please let me know. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, loves.